Dr. Rutherford Finchbeek, and welcome to Evolution and You. This is my friend Skelly, and when we're not saving lives, we like teaching kids about evolution, don't we, Skelly?
Yes, we do!
Hi, my name is Skelly. Come with me on a journey through evolution.
So what is evolution? It has nothing to do with Pokemon, and it doesn't mean we are the direct descendants of today's chimps, a common misconception. Evolution is a scientific theory that at its simplest can be understood as changes in the heritable characteristics of a population over time. Our understanding of evolution began with the ideas of Charles Darwin, a 19th century English scientist. After a famous 5-year-long voyage on the HMS Beagle, Darwin was perplexed by the incredible geographical distribution of wildlife and fossils that he witnessed on his worldwide journey. 20 years after his voyage, Darwin wrote the famous book On the Origin of Species in 1859, which proposed that organisms were the product of evolution, powered by a process he called natural selection. Natural selection rested on 4 key postulates. The first postulate states that whilst the ability of species to reproduce is endless, an environment only has a limited amount of resources. Species have to compete for resources. We call that the struggle for survival. The second postulate says that individuals within a population vary from one to another. The individual variation affects the ability to survive and reproduce. For example, if a lion is born with bad eyesight, its chances of surviving are small because he can't see the gazelles very well. The third postulate claims that this variation affects the offspring. So, if the lion has bad eyes, his babies are likely to have bad eyes too. This in turn will also affect their chances to survive, because they cannot find food as well as other lions that can see perfectly fine. The fourth and last postulate states that species with a well-fitting variation tend to leave more offspring. So, if a lion has sharp claws, he will be able to kill more gazelles than other lions and feed more offspring from his prey than lions with less sharp claws. Hence, more sharp-clawed lion babies will survive. Theories before Darwin. Before Darwin, there were several other explanations for the diversity of life we see here on Earth. Creationism is the idea that God created all life on Earth as described in the Bible. It remains a popular view to this day, but there is no empirical or scientific evidence in support of this theory. French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck proposed another competing theory. Lamarck believed that by selective use or disuse of organs, organisms acquired or lost certain traits during their lifetime. These traits would then be passed on to their offspring. Over time, this process led to change in a species. Today, we know through the mechanics of DNA that hereditary traits are not determined by what you do during your life. Even in Darwin's time, there was empirical evidence to disprove Lamarck. Cutting off a rat's tail did not result in the birth of a tailless rat, and lifting weights during one's life did not result in a stronger child. Individual selection. It is important to note that natural selection produces adaptations that benefit the survival of individuals and not necessarily the survival of an entire population or species. How might this occur? Well, let's say scientists determine that given the availability of food in an ecosystem, beavers should have on average 2 babies a year. At this reproductive rate, the beavers would be at the point where the likelihood of extinction is the lowest. Now, let's say a few beavers can really heat things up in their dam and they produce 10 offspring a year rather than 2. Their baby beavers grow up to also produce 10 beavers a year. Eventually, the highly fertile beavers will dominate the population. Because the ecosystem still has the same limited amount of resources, all these beavers will starve. Why intermediate steps are favored by selection? How does natural selection cause complex adaptations? Incrementally, that is how. Over many generations, natural selection can lead to the formation of sophisticated adaptations such as the eye, but only if each small change along the way is favored by selection. To some degree, the formation of an adaptation involves chance. Still, unrelated species have independently evolved the same complex adaptations in a phenomenon known as convergence. That's why we know that there is much more than luck at work. Similar environmental conditions and pressures have resulted in the independent development of similar adaptations due to natural selection. Why small variations are important. We just explained how complex adaptations, such as the eye, originate as the product of a series of beneficial smaller variations. But what is a variation? Variations are any way in which one animal differs from another animal in its own species, such as curly hair or straight hair. Variations can either be continuous or discontinuous. Continuous variations occur on a range, such as height. Discontinuous variations, such as whether or not you can roll your tongue, do not allow for a range. Either you can or you can't, and you look silly trying it. Try and see if you can do it. 5.5 million years ago, the species that giraffes originated from were 5 feet tall. Within the species of these ancient giraffes, the length of the neck varied. Since they had to compete with similar species for their food, there was a constant struggle for survival. When eating, the ancient giraffes with longer necks were able to reach higher up into the tree and were able to eat the leaves that no other animals could reach, not even the shorter-necked giraffes. The long-necked giraffes, because they had access to more food, had better chances of survival. Over time, the longer-necked giraffes dominated the gene pool as they were more competitive and adapted better to the environment they were living in. That is why nowadays giraffes have long necks. Thus, a continuous variation such as height can influence the evolution of a species. The change from one generation to the next may be small, but it has the possibility to alter a species over millions of years. Darwin's difficulties explaining variation. Unfortunately, Darwin did not have the same knowledge that we have today in order to fully understand and explain evolution. There were still two concepts that bothered Darwin. How there was still variation in species if offspring were a blend of their parents, and how new variations, those that did not already exist, came to be. Today we can explain these two fundamental problems for Darwin through our understanding of genetics and DNA. Variation stays in a population through recessive alleles that we can't see, and new variations can come about through random mutations. Thanks to genetics, we can finally answer these questions.